I'm Dr. John Demartini, and you're watching the Break It Down show.
Yes, yes, you are. Hey, I'm back in the tent after over 2 weeks being on the road, and hey, John, my body is exhausted from all of this. I drove from Temecula, California, to Charleston to raise money for my charity, Save the Brave, and then I had to bring the motorcycle. We feature a motorcycle rider, so I had to bring that all the way back in my pickup truck, and it was an awesome experience. And I saw so many incredible things across the country, the landscape, the people, and everything. But now, day 3 of being back, man, I'm crushed. I'm still so tired. Have you? Are you a road tripper?
Well, I'm right now at sea. I'm in Iceland on my ship, so
No
I
kidding.
do. I live on a ship, so I'm sailing most of the time, or I'm flying. I haven't driven a car in 32 years, so I'm not
Yeah,
much of a
really?
driver. I have somebody else do that for me.
No kidding. And do you drive the ship as well?
No, no, no. I have a captain that takes care of that and staff that takes care of that.
Wow, that's incredible, man. Uh, do you prefer being on the sea than on land, or and when you're on land, do you get to get out and around much?
No, I pop off on onto land quite often, but I'm for the last years or more I've been at sea. I've been living on the ship for 21 years,
Wow.
so I'm at sea a lot. But I have also flown 20 million miles in the air, so I'm a jet set gypsy, and also I guess you could say a sailing
Yeah.
individual too.
How do you pick where you want to sail to?
Uh, just vote it out and decide. I mean, there's a little democracy here on the ship, so we decide where we go, and we put all the factors together and we go there.
That's
We
fantastic.
changed the course yesterday because of the swell that was out and the wind factor. We changed and went to a different direction here in Iceland. We're touring all around Iceland right now.
Oh, that's got to be gorgeous. Yeah, and this is the time of year to do it as opposed to the wintertime, right? So that's
Exactly. Exactly.
hey,
It's actually quite beautiful meeting some lovely people.
that's great. Do you have a particular part of the world you can't wait to get back to?
I've said since I was 20 years old, the universe is my playground, the world is my home, every country is a room in the house, every city is a platform. I get to share my heart and soul. I love traveling. I love going to various places. I don't really have any one spot that's, you know, my root, Earth. So I love I just love traveling. I love being in different places, as I go. And I
Yeah.
don't have anyone. I love going to. I mean, there's a lot of places I go back to, and I love going to. I mean, if you want to see a city, you go to Shanghai or you go to New York or London or whatever. If you want to see, the mountains, you go to Tibet or someplace like that. So, you want to get out to the ocean? Just we were in the Pacific Ocean, out in the middle of absolute nowhere, the most remote area of the ocean, just a few months ago. So yeah, if you want to go to the mountains, you go place wherever it is, the deserts. You want to see a desert, you go to the Sahara Desert or so I love going to all those places.
Oh, that's
But I don't have any one spot that goes that's my route. Even
one
though I
of
was
the.
born in Houston.
You're born in Houston.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, so you move all over the place. One of the routes for my trip here that I just took on was that the things that happen in the little box on your TV, that's not necessarily reality. And when you go out and you meet people and you see the world, in your case, gosh, it's awfully beautiful. And the people that you encounter tend to be pretty amazing. If they have problems, they're not the problems that you usually see on TV. You've done this on a larger scale and for longer than I have. Do you agree with that? Like, is the face to face reality the actual reality, or what do you think?
Well, TV is for sensationalism, mass TV. So I realize that that's filled with subjective biases and false attribution biases and distortions and things. So I don't try to look at the world through the TV. I look at the world on the people I meet.
Mm,
And most of the places I've gone, I've been to 172 countries. Most of the countries I've been to, I've found that people are amazing and they just want to be loved and appreciate who they are. They want to go make a difference. They want to work and raise a family and take care of things and be of service to people. And I haven't seen that in any country I've been in. I've been in Eastern, Western, and Northern and Southern. I've been to the Arctics and the Antarctics, and I've never seen anybody that doesn't have that as a basic scheme. I think people, if you leave them alone, they just want to do something pretty cool with their life and make a difference. So I find that people overall have a, a desire to make a contribution and be loved for who they are. They want to be loved and appreciated for who they are. They want to be who they are.
Yeah, for my own time deployed and talking to locals, one of the things I taught myself was that, everybody hates cancer. Everybody wants their kids to do better. For the most part, everybody wants to be left alone by other people, like not left alone, like isolated, but like just get out of my business, get your own business. Let me handle my business. If I need help, I'll let you know. Those are truths that I've found across many nations.
Yeah, I would agree that I think, well, they want to be appreciated for their role and the contribution in the world, but they don't want to be told how to be. No one wants to be told you should, you ought to, you supposed to, you got to, you have to, you must, you need to. They don't want imperatives imposed on them and moral hypocrisies that other people project onto them. They want to be loved and appreciated for who they are, and they want to be doing what's meaningful to them. So I think that that's true. And if you leave them alone and or respect them enough to communicate what you have to say in terms of what they have, to fulfill their lives, I find that people are amazing. I don't like to put labels on people because I find them they're not real. I think the labels are incomplete awarenesses.
Yeah.
I have people come up to me and say, well, so and so is a real bully, or this person's, a real mean one, or whatever. If I find out what they value and I find respectfully how to communicate a conversation in that, I don't find them that way. I find that every human being has, can be harsh or soft. To be a tiger, tough as a tiger, as soft as a pussycat. I am. I don't know about you, but I certainly am. You ruffle my feathers, I can be tough, and you pet my feathers, I can be really kind. I mean, I'm all the above, and so I think people deserve to be not labeled, but deserve to be seen for the whole, not the parts.
Yeah, and as soon as you put a label on someone, you put them into a different mode and a different mindset, even for yourself. And sometimes, I guess I would ask if you agree with this. Sometimes you find a person, and even if you're not simpatico at that moment, it could be the next moment. It could be 5 years from now. Maybe they're going through a bad stretch in life. Maybe you're going through a bad stretch in your life. Maybe it was just not meant to be that day. But if you give people a chance to evolve and allow them to be the best person that they are, like ultimately, I mean, we're all pretty much trying to do our best. Maybe we're not the best at doing our best every single time we have a chance to do our best, but we're not purposely trying to destroy one another on a day-to-day basis.
Well, I did something 37 plus years ago. I went to the Oxford Dictionary and I went through every human behavioral trait that a human being could have. And there are 4,628 traits that I underlined. And I looked at where in my life did I display that. I found I had every one of them. I had everything that I saw in that dictionary. And when I did that, I looked at it and I realized that, no matter what you say about me, it's partly true in some setting somewhere. I'm nice, I'm mean, I'm kind, I'm cruel, I'm open, I'm closed, I'm honest, I'm dishonest. I'm all the above at different moments in my life. And when I finally realized all that about me and I didn't need to get rid of half of myself to love myself, that softened my projections onto other people. And
Yeah.
what I do is I whatever I see in them, I immediately go, you know, where do I do that? And then what's the benefit to me of them doing that? And where's the benefit of I doing that? I just kind of soften it up. And I find that when I do, the moment I take the edge off it and not project some sort of a projected idea who they are and put them in a box, they're pretty cool people. Most people are pretty cool. I I ran into this rough group at this restaurant one time, and as a real rough, kind of rowdy looking group, and people were kind of frightened about being in the group because it's like, when you get a group of people together, they can be, a little bit more outrageous. And I walked in and introduced myself and shook hands with them and said hi to people, and I softened them up, and we were giggling and laughing within about 15 minutes. And all of a sudden, when other people were going, oh, they're not what I thought. They just looked like they were tough. They're just human beings. They want to be appreciated. I would say
Well,
if you can find out what people are dedicated to, what they value most, and find a way of communicating something that can help that, I find that people actually go out of the way and do what they can to help you.
yeah, I have found similar things in my own work when you talk about like culture, and I would submit that if you can understand how someone makes decisions and what their goals are, you can identify their collaborative quadrant. The rest of them are things like nepotism and corruption or passive aggressive or incompetence. And if you have these things that are coming out of your brain, like this person's incompetent, you've likely missed an opportunity to understand who this person is and what they need. And by the way, this is a two-way communicative path, right? So I have to make sure I'm communicating. These are the goals that I'm trying to do. This is how I make my decisions. And then if you can find a common groove, and I would say, like, if I can accomplish my goal through their cultural path, then hands off the wheel, let that part of culture work in my advantage instead of just bowling my way through something, because it's easy to do it my way. It doesn't mean it's the only way, you know?
Well, everybody has a unique set of priorities and set of values, and they're fingerprint specific, and they're based on the vantage points that they've experienced through their life. And no two people are supposed to be the same. If any two people are the same, one's not necessary. So if you go through life, and imagine if everybody woke up the next morning and everybody was you, it'd be the twilight zone, man. You'd be wanting to get rid of those people. Go, man, I that's too much of me. I think there's only room for one of me.
Right.
You know, I wouldn't want to be married to me. That's all I know. Any woman that can put up with me is an exception. I think that any woman that can smile at me is deserves a medal. That's what my girlfriend says anyway.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the things I've been reading up on is as we get to know genes more, we're starting to understand the role they play, and we can't seem to find a limit for how much genes impact who we are, whether it's direct our genes or how our parents raise us because of their genetic makeup. We're realizing that genes play up, gosh, over 50% of who we are. And that sort of, I don't know, it takes some of the hard work out of it. Like, this is who I am. This is how I operate. This is how I'm built. Now, how do I do what I'm doing best?
Yeah. Well, there's also epigenes, as you know, and epigenetics is also the nature nurture balancer. And so our experiences, if we go through, I tell people that anything in your life you can't say thank you for is baggage, and anything you can say thank you for is fuel. So if you can go back and cognitively reappraise and reassess those things that you think you've been wounded by, and go find out how they actually served you in that moment and from that moment till now, and stop and be accountable to look at the upsides to the things you think are down, or maybe the downsides of things you are eluded by elations, and center yourself and get more governed within yourself, then you'll find out that, man, everything is on the way. It's not in the way. I've had situations in my life I thought, oh, this terrible event that came. Then a day, a week, a month, a year, 5 years later, I went back and went, wow, thank you. And why wait and have the wisdom of the ages with the aging process? Why not just look right on the spot and find out, how is this going to help me get what I want in life? And if you ask that question, I think it's one of the greatest questions we can ever ask. How is whatever's happening to me right now, how is it helping me fulfill what's most meaningful to me? How is it helping me fulfill my mission of contribution, my service to the world, and my most meaningful objectives? When you answer that question, hold yourself accountable, you have a tremendous amount of gratitude and can be brought to tears and have amazing healing of so-called wounds that people accumulate, and that liberates. And I find if you do that with your perception of other people, how is what they are, whatever they are, how is it helping me fulfill my mission? You can go over there and hug them when you're done.
Yeah.
Then it throws them off. I had this really this lady that used to come in the office, and she was my staff said, this is the rudest woman we've ever met. She comes in, she grabs the telephone, takes command, tells us what to do and everything else. And they were just upset. They said, I wish you'd just kick this lady out. We don't want to have to deal with her. She's just this and this and this and this. So I said, instead of doing that, let's try something just for fun. Let's give her a certificate for the patient of the month and make a list of all the things we would like her to do, that the behaviors that we would love to see, and just put that as a list and thank her for all those behaviors. And she was completely thrown off. No one ever imagined doing it. You couldn't have imagined it. And she was like, the next time she came in, she was nice to the people. And they said, wow, what a transformation. I said, look, every human being's got both sides. And she's probably used to being in command at her business and telling people what to do. She's a leader. and she's not used to being told what to do. And so that's her operation. But look, we just gave her an acknowledgement and watch, and now she's now like a little cuddly little bear, a little puff muffin. And, and everybody was like going, wow, what we learned from that. So from now on, we're not going to label any of the patients. We're going to find out how we can find out what's meaningful to them and try to help them fulfill what's meaningful to them. And that's the healing. That's part of the healing process.
One of my friends, her mom was a very controlling person, and you get locked into, this is how I do run my life, and I've always done things this way, that kind of thing. And literally, her dying words were, "You're doing it wrong." I mean, she was being helped up, and like, because she was so incapacitated through old age and illness and everything, and so she's like, "You're doing it wrong," and I'm like, that was the last thing she says, basically. It's like people,
Well,
yeah.
I always ask myself, when somebody criticizes me or tells me I'm wrong or whatever, I immediately ask, what specific thing am I doing that I was unconscious of that challenges their values? And
Right.
where am I being arrogant where I need to be brought back into authenticity? And then I realized what they're doing is they're making me authentic, and they're humbling me if I'm cocky or I'm not respecting them and communicating their values. And the moment I do that, I soften it, and they change when I change. It's quite, if you love people for who they are, they turn into who you love. That's my observation.
When you are when you have less capacity as you get older or more ill or whatever it is, you also sacrifice, and no control over it, your dignity. Whether you're incontinent or whatever it's going to be, these things are just ripped from you. And that sucks. It's not liberating. It's a lack of independence. It's embarrassing. All these things. Our neighbor, he's passed away now, but every now and then he'd fall down, and I'd have to be the guy that went over there and scooped him up in my arms. I mean, this is a human experience, John, right? Like, I'm picking this person up who's at the end of their life, and I'm trying to set them down, and I'm like, how do I do this for you? All these things. And you could be callous about that. You could be offended, or you could be, disgusted, or whatever it is. But man, I just wanted to make sure that I afforded that person as much dignity and control as I could. I'm not saying that was the right answer, but that's the best I could do in this situation. I wasn't new. This was new to me, trying to care for someone who was elderly, and only in instances where they needed my specific big back, strong armed help.
Yeah, I had a guy that was doing some of that in my mom's retirement place that she was at. And I finally, he was doing it. I said, "You'd do anything to get attention from one of these nurses, wouldn't you? I can't believe it. You're falling right now just to get those nurses to come pick you up. I can't believe you're doing that. That's a great job. Well done." They chuckle,
Yeah,
they I try to turn it into something that's humorous too, because
yeah,
otherwise they do have it. It says, "Look, you've had repression. You've been wanting to be exposing yourself as an exhibitionist, and you finally got to do it now. So did you get any awards out of it, or did you get some extra points out of it?" I
yeah.
have some fun with them, and I get them to laugh, and that way they're not sitting there feeling a loss of dignity, because we can have it fun. We can always turn it into something of an opportunity too.
One of the truths I've also discovered along the way is that we are our biggest problem, whether it's the personal we, the community we. Like, if we focused on internal, like, how do we improve what we do, who we are, how we act, well, there's a lot of fertile ground there to work, right? Like, we're not talking about stuff that is hard to do here. It's like, just by just simply reorienting where your work is, and stop pointing the finger out, but going like, hey, how do I become more tolerant, or whatever it is. And I think I would definitely suggest that tolerance, look, it's easier said than done, because that means when you tolerate things, when you push away bigotry, you've got to accept the presence of a lot of things that you don't agree with. But that's
Well,
that's
that's
the
that's exactly why I went and looked in the dictionary to find all the traits I had, because I made a list of everything that I liked and disliked. I found it all in me. I haven't found anything that I've judged somebody else for that I don't have in my life. Not one. And I
right.
went through 4,628 of them, and I look at that, and then when I tell people, where have you done that? They go, "Well, I've never done that." I go, "Never? Well, not often. Not often. Well, not recently. How recent? Yesterday."
Yeah,
I
yeah.
go, we only judge things in other people. It's an old biblical proverb that, what you see in others is just a reflection of yourself. So I'm a firm believer, if I take the time and look at that and then find out how it serves me, because it does, I've learned, I've humbled me. It's made me more authentic. It made me more patient. It helped me relate to people. It's helped me in my marriages or relationship, because my wife passed away, and I had some of those same things when dealing with her when she was passing. And,
Yeah.
it made me prepared. I don't think there's anything that can happen that people can do that isn't going to prepare you for being a greater human being.
You said a key word. It's a buzzword right now, and it's always interesting for me to talk to people like yourself who've got some big ideas and have thought these things through. People talk about being authentic quite a lot, and I would submit that you either are authentic or you're working to either become it or you're ignoring it. You can't purposely be authentic because that's inauthentic in itself. So, what are your thoughts on authenticity? How does one create that aura? I get told that a lot, but I also, shoot myself in the foot with my authenticity. Sometimes maybe I ought to pull it back a little bit.
Well, I think that every symptom in the body, every psychological symptoms, every sociological symptom, every business symptom is a feedback to get us to have sustainable, fair exchange with other people and to be authentic. Because if we puff ourselves up and look down on other people with arrogance and narcissism, we create an unsustainable relationship dynamic. And if we minimize ourselves and look up to people and put them on a pedestal, we'll sacrifice for others until we have futility. And though both of those will create symptoms in our life and try to get us back into being real, authentic people, having sustainable, equitable, fair exchange. So I think that's what it's trying to do. But what I found is when what everybody has a set of priorities and values in their life, and whatever's highest is the most intrinsic. And when they're living congruently with what's really true to them, they feel that that's their identity. So if your highest value is your children, you'll call yourself a mother. If your highest value is business, you'll call yourself an entrepreneur. If your highest value is sports, you'll call yourself a pole vaulter. If your highest value is, intellectual pursuits, you'll call yourself a professor or something. Your identity revolves around whatever you value most, and caring enough to find out what that is in yourself and in other people, and then respectfully dialogue what you want in your values to terms of others and try to find a sustainable, fair exchange increases the probability of having authenticity, because you're not puffing yourself up or beating yourself up. Because if you inflate or deflate yourself, you're not getting to be yourself. And I think the both are going to create symptoms until you get back to being yourself.
That's fantastic. Learning about authenticity and I'm a big personally, I'm trying to gather wisdom, right? Because where's my machine at? I've got this machine right here, and it gives me all the knowledge I could ever want. Is Olivia Newton-John dead or alive? Oh, she's dead. Okay, I can look that on my phone. I can look that up. I can learn about the songs or anything else, but I can't gather wisdom directly through it unless I would say there has to be some kind of design to gather wisdom. For me, it's a human experience going out and trying to do things. Expressing gratitude as much as I possibly can. I can never do that enough, but how does one gather wisdom reliably and repeatedly?
Well, I define wisdom, the wisdom of love and the love of wisdom, philosophia, as the synthesis and synchronicity of all pairs of opposites. And this
Okay.
goes back to Heraclitus, the Greek philosopher. So what happens is we're infatuated with somebody. We're conscious of the upsides and unconscious of the downsides. But our intuition is trying to whisper to us the downsides to bring us back into balance. And if we're resentful to somebody, we're conscious of the downsides, unconscious of the upsides. And our intuition is trying to bring us back into balance by showing us the upsides. It's trying to say, well, there must be meaning why this person's in my life. Or if I'm infatuated, too good to be true, keep your eyes open. So your intuition is trying to bring those into balance. And when they're balanced and you see both sides simultaneously, you have wisdom. But when you have only one side, you have folly. You're infatuated and you have an impulse towards it and it runs you extrinsically, or you have an instinct. When you're seeing the downsides without the upsides, you try to avoid it instinctively. But when you actually see both sides simultaneously, Wilhelm Wundt, the father of psychology, said, when you see simultaneous contrast, you gain the wisdom of love and the love of wisdom. So it's being able to see, as the Taoists describe, the center path between the pairs of opposites, or the middle path in the Buddhist, or the equanimity in the Christian construct, right? This is the seeing of both sides, because there's no such thing as a human being that's one-sided. There's no hero without a villain. There's no villain without a hero. There's always two sides. I don't allow myself to get fooled by facades.
Right.
I look deeper through the facade and look for the other side. Whatever I see, where's the other side? And that centers me and allows me to now relate to them wholly instead of partially.
When you start to see these things, you start to, I guess you would say read between the lines, but I think it's more than that. I mean, again, my work overseas with the Army and the US government trying to look at like how to make things better. You saw the facades everywhere. Hey, we're doing a great job. We went out and engaged with the locals and they love us, and you're like, I talked to them 2 days later and I didn't see that. Right. So you start to see the sinew and how diseased it is between these connective things. Part of what I did was, and I think you'll understand this concept. I was like a liminal traveler, right? I can withstand the I call it miscomfort, right? Like I don't know this world, but I can learn to become, it's like being culturally adept. I can go into a different culture and it's going to be awkward and a little bit weird at first, but I'll get there. So I could go into the world of, say, the Afghan village, right? Afghan village 15. And then I could bring that reality back to the Army. And I could say, hey, this is the reality over there. And this is how incongruent you are. Can I get these two bodies to slowly nudge towards, and this is by the way, this is a path. And I've got to go to the Afghans and say, here's where the Army is. And this is what they want. And if I could explain that a little bit, I've got to develop trust in each of these bubbles. Not easy to do, but that does seem like what you do, what I do, and it allows us
It's rewarding.
yeah. Oh, that too. But it allows us to see systems and look, the desired outcome is not coming out. I see your machine, but there's a problem on this end. And if I'm a boss, I want Pete to tell me, like, what do you mean it's not coming out? It should be. The machine's built, but you go out and you test for it and you don't find it. There's a problem.
Yeah. Well, and there was a lovely lady that came on our ship that came and lectured here. And we brought her on to give us some education as we were going to a particular country. And she was teaching us about the customs and the rules and the patterns of behavior that they have, and how what we do can be offensive without us even knowing it. Like if we look at somebody and wave and go like this at them, like that can mean stop right now and submit. Where if you go like that and bow to them or whatever, it means we greet you with gratitude. So a pattern that's in the US, which is perfectly normal to a person in the United States, don't think anything about it,
Yeah.
can be completely offensive in another country. So knowing and caring enough about the other individual to find out what their values and cultural values are, gives you a competitive advantage in initiating dialogue that's respectful, that opens the doorways for communication. Otherwise, you shut it down and then you get belligerent, you go into your amygdala and you go into defense,
Right.
they go into defense, and you're both right, and then you get nowhere except intolerance.
You got to stay out of that amygdala, right? That thing's full of traps. Okay, so I want to challenge you a little bit on this because I know that there's more with this cultural thing. We often hear people talking about culture and the hand gestures and that kind of thing, and we can't be bound by the fear of offense, right? It's okay. Pete would say it's okay to go somewhere and say, I don't know the first thing about your culture, but I'm desperate to learn it. Teach me. And then Pete would also say, you can't out Iraq and Iraqi. You can't out Azerbaijan and Azerbaijani. You can't outdo them. Allow them the grace and the courtesy of teaching you about them. And
exactly.
Be willing to learn. So I don't want people to feel like, oh, I keep my hands in my pockets and everywhere I go. No, it's okay not to know everything about a culture. Matter of fact, it's wonderful. And it's a wonderful tool to get people to open up to you, because wherever I go, I can always say these words, the people in this place are the most hospitable people I can think of, and they love that. Everybody wants to be hospitable. They want to show you their food. They want to talk about their history. They want to talk about, their lamentations from the olden days. They want to tell you all this stuff, but we have to be willing to receive that message, as opposed to being afraid of offending someone because you say the wrong words, or like
that's exactly right. You want to learn. You want to learn from them. You see, a dialogue is receiving and listening as much as speaking. It's not speaking mostly. It's both. But at the same time, you want to respect them enough to study a little bit in advance to know basic things. I'm a firm believer that everybody, like I say, wants to be loved and appreciated for who they are, and just finding out what they're really committed to and asking questions. To tell is not to sell; it's to ask questions, and ask questions. If you walk into a room and somebody gives you an accolade and says nice things about you, and you feel, well, thank you, if you're really humbled, they'll keep lifting you. But if you go above what they expect and get cocky, they'll pull you down. So each individual has a kind of a thermostat of what they perceive people, themselves, and other people. Anytime you go above it, they'll bring you down. Anytime you go below it, bring it up. And finding out, and just know that the more humble you are, the more likely the doors of opportunity of communication go up. But if you go in there cocky, you're going to get attacked.
This is a great
It's the
example.
lesson.
No, I mean, that's great. And I really want to throw this example back to you, because I think there are tools to do this, right? When you interact with people. So I'm at the Edmund Pettus Bridge, which, for everybody listening, it's a very important social icon for racial discrimination and the fight that goes in with that. So the Edmund Pettus Bridge is in Selma, Alabama. And so I go to Selma. I want to go see this place. And there's people out there, these two dudes, and they're talking about the history of it. And so I don't know the right way to ask this question. So I'm like, hey, I tell them, like, I'm going to ask a good question, but I don't want to offend you. So I'm going to ask it in the best way I can and know that I'm trying, but I really want to understand this aspect of it. And so I asked him this, fairly complex and touchy question. And he's like, man, I'm so glad you asked that question. But I took the time to say, this is a loaded question that can be dangerous, but I don't mean it for that. I just don't know the words, and no one knows the words on how to ask these questions with everybody you meet in every circumstance. But by simply slowing down for a second and say, hey man, I care about you and I'm desperate to understand this, but this is the best way I can ask it. We talked probably for half an hour after that and had a conversation that was several orders better than it might have been if I hadn't have asked that question.
I was in Iran, speaking in Iran a few years back, and the president was there, and there's 200, people from the government and ministers, and there was a bunch of executives from big companies and stuff. It was really a big event, and it was like speaking at the United Nations in their country. And at first it was a little tense because there was a fraction of people that wanted to attack me in the media for something that I'd written in a book. Something I said offended some, really radical guy there. And so they were bunches of it, like 200 people outside the gates trying to find out who I was. And, they wanted to debate me on TV and stuff. And I was like prepared for it the best I could, but didn't know what was going to happen. Then I went in there and speak. And the first thing I did when I was there, I've got 600 people in this room. I've got security all the way around, got bodyguards on this thing, just in case there's a challenge. And I said, when I first came back from Hawaii and I moved to Texas and I started to go to college, I ran into my first student that has been a student with me for, at this time, 40 years. And he was from your country. And he told me 40 years ago, someday you'll have to come to my country. And I got tears in my eyes and I said, I have finally made it to your country. And you have no idea what it's meant to finally make it here after 40 years, after what this gentleman has done. And it just changed the energy in the room. They applauded. The group that was upset calmed down. And I said, I just can't wait to share with you some of the information that I've learned. If it in any way is something that you already have, please know that I'm a young man and I'm trying to learn and teach. And I kept it really, and I got a standing ovation, and the group disbanded and they let go because there was no pretense. There was no exaggeration. There was nothing to bite on. And I think if we take the time to do that, and even if we're in a rough situation, we can turn around and soften it, and we can turn it around. It's our addiction to pride that causes a lot of our issues. It's our addiction to fantasies that people are supposed to live in our values that cause a lot of our problems. It's an addiction to a one-sided world instead of people with opposite values that are necessary in the world. And it's learning how to appreciate a whole, not the parts, and to get out of the amygdala, because the amygdala is in survival mode and it wants to seek prey and avoid predator. And anything that challenges or is different than you tend to see as predator, and anything that's similar. If you look for similarities instead of differences between people, you open up to them. But if you look at the differences more than the similarities, you're going to close down. It's the quality of your life is based on the quality of the questions you ask. If you ask questions that allow you to see the similarities and find the things that is whole about the individual, your day going through life is amazing day, and you have a lot to be grateful for. I really believe there's nothing in life that we can experience that we can't turn into gratitude if we ask the right question.
Yeah. Boy, yeah, I love it. I love all these things. One more experience from my trip, and I really want to get into your latest effort, and so we'll talk about that here in a moment. But so I'm from California, right? And once you leave California, California to everybody else becomes this really weird place. We're politically crazy. I don't know. We do all these things, and folks are like, why would anybody ever want to live there? And then here I am from this crazy place, and they look at me like, well, and I was like, I've got a kind of answer for it. The opposite end of that is in California primarily, and I'm being very unfair. There's a lot of millions, tens of millions of people here in California, but it's very common to hear the conversation about the South and what even is the South, first off, but how the South is backwards, how the South is this and South is that. And I go to the South, and there are a lot of problems there, but the problems aren't the people. It's like, how do they survive? These towns that have, they used to have something, or they literally moved the road away from that town, and so now this town still exists. But all these things, it's not the things that we think here in California, right? So you have these twisted realities of what the South is or what California is. Then you meet the people from there, and again, they're wonderful people, right? And so we're trying to open our brains up and allow whoever the people that we're interacting to just be good people. And sure, maybe they have different politics, or sure, maybe they voted differently over the last 50 years than your state has. But also, who wants to try to manage a complex state like California? I mean, it is an impossible problem to solve, right? There's no way to get all those people going in the same direction. It's just a big lesson on allowing people, looking at people and saying, hey, these people are good people who are working hard, trying to do a little better, like we opened the show with. But if you come in from the other direction and say you're a bunch of backwards racists who don't educate your people and hate sidewalks, well, then you can go in that direction, and certainly you can find it. But I think the other path is sweeter and more filled with lessons.
Well, I learned a long time ago that I'm filled with paradoxes. If I go up to somebody and I say, there's a part of you that wants to relax on the beach, another one part that wants to get ahead and get successful.
Yeah.
You're filled with paradoxes. You want to be loyal to your boyfriend or girlfriend, but ooh, that chick over there is hot. You got these paradoxes. Everywhere is a paradox. And nature has a way of making sure that you have a pair of opposites in values in the world. For every person that's pro this, there'll be somebody that's anti that. And you think, well, they're wrong and I'm right. No, I'm wrong, they're right. No, it's not about right or wrong. Inside the human body, there is anabolic and catabolic, build, destroy, alkaline, acid, parasympathetic, sympathetic. And both of them work in harmony to remodel the body to adapt to a changing environment. And society has pairs of opposites that are there for adaptation and to make sure we don't get stagnant in some sort of a dogmatic tradition of black and white. And we need those pairs of opposites because maximum growth and development occurs at the border of support and challenge. The two pairs.
Yeah.
And that's where we grow knowledge. Imagine if you had nothing but prey and no predator, nothing but support and no challenge.
Right.
You'd be a dependent individual that would be gluttonous and overweight and not fit. And if you had nothing but predator and no prey, you'd be emaciated and starved and not fit. But you put a nice food chain together, a prey and predator, support and challenge, and you get maximum fitness. And so you want to honor the pairs of opposites and realize that they're there to stretch you, to make you more resilient and then more adaptable instead of black and white and rigid, which makes us stagnate. We grow and evolve when we deal with it. Mark Penn, in his book Microtrends, went on the internet and found all pairs of opposites and showed that if somebody's putting, they want an energy drink that's full of caffeine and energy drink, and then they want natural water, fresh water.
Yeah.
They're pairs of opposites. And so I'm a firm believer that both sides are necessary. Taking a side and taking a stance is only going to get you a victim of circumstance. Learn to dance. Learn to embrace the pair of opposites that life has to offer. When you marry, you're going to have things you like about the person and things you don't. You're going to want to hug them and slug them, as they say. And that's part of the game. And if you can't handle both the hugs and the slugs, you're probably not going to be able to handle a real true love. Pairs of opposites.
Yeah, it turns out life is this balancing act between these things, right? Iconoclast, iconoblast. You need new bones. These, and how about it doesn't matter. Yeah, yes, I agree with you. Okay, let's talk about your latest effort, Awaken Your Astronomical Vision, which is the thing that you're giving everybody in the audience for free. You guys can go to that link. It's right below here. It's also in the show notes. It's also in the comments right now if you want to click on it right now and act on that. But let's talk about this. Let's talk about where you're at currently and what you want to share with us in terms of your latest thoughts.
Well, I was doing a presentation in Johannesburg, South Africa, and I did it in a what do you call a planetarium,
Mm-hmm.
and it was to a YPO group. It was for business people to help them have a bigger vision. I would say if you want to make a difference in yourself, you need a vision as big as your family. If you want to make a difference in your family, you need a vision as big as your community. Something you want to dedicate your life to the community. You want to make a difference in community, have a vision as big as your city. If you want to make a difference in your city, be a leader in the city, have a vision as big as your state. If you want to make a difference in your state, have a vision big as your nation. If you want to make a difference in the nation, have a vision as big as the world. And if you want to really make a difference in the world, which we're all capable of doing with the internet, particularly, have an astronomical vision. Have a celestial view so you can have a terrestrial impact. And so this is about how to live by priority and congruently with authenticity and integrity towards something you deeply feel that's meaningful and inspiring and fulfilling that would make a difference in the world, and do it in an equitable, sustainable, fair exchange in a most effective and efficient manner. That's what it's about, how to do that, how to make a massive contribution on the planet and have a massive amount of fulfillment doing it. And being rewarded, not just economically, that too, but rewarded by the fulfillment of watching people say thank you. I think the greatest, when I ask people around the world, what is the most meaningful, most fulfilling moments in life? It's when they did something that somebody said thank you for. That's my observation. So this is about how to do that, how to live a life like that. So it could be for anybody really, but it could be particularly for those people that want to grow a business of service to people to make a difference in the world, so they can have a little bit more prosperity in life.
I love it. It's possible to be wealthy without having any money as well, as long as you have enough to meet your needs. That ability to get out of your amygdala and worry about like making all of the money and be like, this right here is a sweet spot. Now let me feed the rest of my life and have. I mean, I'm very fortunate. I have friends all over the place and folks that are desperate to come out and talk with me or me to talk with them, whatever it is, right? And so you get to have this enriched life. I don't make a lot of money, but boy, I have a lot of experiences that are opportunities for me to share or enrich other people's lives or vice versa.
Well, yesterday I went to this little bitty village. It was about 1,000 people. It's a fishing village, and it was during the 1980s. It was a boom town.
Mm,
I mean, the herring was being fished here, and there was billion herring here. And the people were working, and they were making very little. I mean, they were making like really low, but
yeah.
they sang and they danced and they hugged and they were engaging. And we watched them, and we got to meet and talk to some of the people that were there at the time. And I know very wealthy people. I've met many people that are very fortunate and wealthy financially, and I've also met people that are very impoverished, live in townships. And I found that that doesn't determine whether you're happy or sad.
Mm.
It's you living congruently in a way that's equitable, that makes a difference in people's lives, that brings some fulfillment. Money without meaning leads to debauchery. Money with meaning leads to philanthropy.
I love it. Say that one more time for everybody so they can hear that. That was great.
Money without meaning can lead to debauchery, unfulfilled, drunken, immediate gratifying kind of lifestyle that's ungrateful because it's just you can do anything and you just have no control of yourself.
Right.
But money with meaning can lead to philanthropy. And
Mhm.
the love of human beings is a love of all of us. I think the reflective awareness idea that who in the universe or who in the world am I? It's all me. It's all my reflection. I think
Mhm.
reflective awareness is true love and intimacy, where we can see that whatever we see in others, we have in ours. We're not too proud or too humble to admit what we see in others inside ourselves. It transcends the bigotries and the biases and the prejudice and discriminations, and allows us to see humanity. And when somebody says, "Well, this person's got a different color," or "This person's not this," whatever, I said, at one time, dark skin ruled the world. Other times, red skin, yellow. That means nothing. If you can procreate and have children with them, that's the same species. Just because they have a different colored hair or skin or whatever means nothing. Human beings are human beings. And we probably even crossbred with other earlier phases of the human being now, from what we can look at our DNA, Neanderthal and all the other portions of the human species line. So who knows? We may have more in common genetically, even with the primates. We have 97%. So if we got 97% with them, we got 99.9% with all other human beings. So find what's common and don't look at what's different.
Denisovans. Some people have Denisovan DNA in it, and it's super hard to detect because they've not been Denisovans for a long time, but that's there. We can look in the Amazon basin and we can see Micronesian DNA that shouldn't be there based on the timeline. So as long as there's been humans, they've got in boats and they've gone places just like you. Africans, all you got to do is drop a log in the water off the coast of West Africa and you end up in the Caribbean, right? Like, let's not act like this is a new thing.
About 8% of us is bacteria. So we got, for every cell in our body, there's 10 cells of bacteria. So I tell people I'm just a cesspool, a septic tank, walking around getting to hug people.
Yeah. And I think we are 60+% the same as a banana. So if we're gonna get all crazy DNA.
So I would say just look inside yourself and find it. Whatever you see in others, find in yourself, and your life is definitely makes it easier to go through life.
One of the when I talk about hey, look, we got to work together, a little more middle ground. And if you're uncomfortable in the middle, that's probably where the work is, right? Being comfortable on your side of the fence, whether it's politically or whatever it is. You owe it to yourself to take a couple steps in the other direction, away from that and towards the middle. And that requires tolerance and a rejection of bigotry. Those are synonym words, but I'm using them to kind of illustrate the point here. And then one of the automatic responses to that is like, well, I hate and I will not tolerate Nazis. And it's like, well, yeah, sure. You don't have to condone the actions, but if you ever want to be able to, like, if you could convert a Nazi to being not a Nazi, you'd have to start by tolerating their existence.
Well, I think sometimes the people who do the activities are reflections of a handful of people that are in the political leadership role. That's all. To say that a German, because they were in the war back then, is an evil person. Right. I haven't met any evil Germans yet. I've met some lovely German people that are just fantastic people. So I haven't met all these. I've been to Japan. I've been to Germany. I've been to Iran. Even when all this stuff that you see on the news and propaganda and stuff you see, I still see human beings, and they're usually very generous and go out of their way and say, come and let me feed you and tell me about your life and tell me about this. Oh. I was sitting in Tehran at the airport, and it was pretty obvious. I would think I was an American, and I was sitting there, and two people came up to me and said, "Tell us about America."
Yes.
And I said, well, I'm not there that often now. I travel all the time, but what I know about is this. And we had this incredible dialogue. Tell me about your country. They were curious, and it was lovely. And we gave each other a big hug at the end and said, thank you, because we don't know what to believe. We see on TV's things. We don't know what to believe. And I said, well, I can almost guarantee you that probably what's on TV is a little bit skewed.
It's designed to sell Cadillacs and soap. That's what's on TV. Things that sell ads. That's the God's honest truth right there.
Yeah, it's commercial.
Yeah, one of the things. So every year I go back to my high school and I talk to the seniors that are about to graduate, and I'm like, I'm you from the future. What would you like to ask me? And look, their little brains can't always handle that, but I'm honest with them and I treat them like adults because they're about to be, like, in 8 minutes they're going to be adults. So I sort of probably the first adult to jump into their life and say, hey, you're a dude, I'm a dude. What would you like to know? And some of the things that they ask about are things that you're talking about now. Like they want to understand. And my buddy who does this with me, he's the teacher. One of the questions he always brings up is, what are your experiences from being abroad? Because we get taught that, Americans are ugly Americans. And sure, there are ugly Americans. We all have bad, we all have good and bad. But my experience is that people are fascinated by America, especially by California or Florida or the other places. And they have these ridiculous questions that couldn't possibly be true, but it's all they've had access to. And when you talk to them, oh my gosh, like you get to learn so much about them. And then also, hit the ball back to them and say, well, what is it like here? And then get the good and the bad from them. It's a wonderful tool to get to know people, and an important lesson for all of us to realize, like, the South is not what we think the South is. And Pete would say, you cannot presume to improve the condition of something you refuse to understand the condition of. Like, you have to go out and get into that environment and allow those people to be people.
Well, anytime you assume righteously that you know what other people need without finding out from what they want, you usually get a backfiring challenge back to humble you, to get you back into fair exchange with people.
Yeah.
So people will give you, the world will anytime you project, a righteous attitude onto somebody else, nature's going to humble you. So I'm a firm believer that it's wiser to go in there as an egalitarian approach than it is to go in there from an aristocracy or oligarchy or kind of a plutocracy position. Come in there as a human being.
You can see on the page down below, there's the drdemartini.com. Everything you need is there. You can go to his link tree. You can go to Instagram. You can go to everywhere. Just type in Dr. Demartini or John Martini. You'll find everything you want to find out about him. Also, don't forget, Awaken Your Astronomical Vision is free. Just go to that link right there, and you'll be able, and the Break It Down show. If you don't put that in, just go get the thing and watch a presentation, and that's going to give you some opportunities to work on some of the things that we've talked about today. John, I've had you for almost an hour. I don't want to take up too much of your time. I know the internet runs out on the boat every now and then. But what are some closing words? Do you have any questions for me at all? And then how do we all, just in general, be a step better today? How do we all just take one step today towards being the better version of us?
Well, I tell people to identify what's really priority to you, not what you think it should be, not what you think it's supposed to be or have to be, or not what you wish it would be, not your fantasies, but what is really an intrinsically, spontaneously important thing for you, and get true about what's valuable to you. And then start prioritizing your life to live integrally and authentically according to that. The magnificence of who you truly are is far greater than any fantasies you'll impose on yourself. And if you want to be loved for who you are, unless you're being who you are, it's not easy to be. Mm-hmm. So if you exaggerate yourself or minimize yourself, you're going to get feedback from the world to try to get you back to being yourself. And that's where it works. So give yourself permission to shine. Don't shrink. Don't live in the shadows of anyone. Don't, stand on the shoulders of giants as Newton was doing, and give yourself permission to do something extraordinary on the planet. The real you is extraordinary. It's unique. It does make a difference when you're authentic. If you lose your authenticity and try to be somebody you're not, you just diluted the power to make a difference in the world. So give yourself permission to be you. So now, no matter what you've done or not done, you're worthy of love. Just remember to run that in your mind each night. And don't stop until you get a tear of gratitude for the magnificence of who you are.
Love it. Stand by for 1 second as I wrap this up. Hey, thanks for watching the show. I really appreciate it. Right here, you can subscribe. Please do that. It makes the show grow. Hit that notification bell so you know which incredible guest is coming up next. Down below is the PayPal link. You can put a small subscription in. That is an enormous help. All that money goes right back into the show. And then right up over here are the next episodes you should listen to, curated by yours truly. Thank you so much for watching the Break It Down show.